coming up on this episode of the Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise podcast.
But it says, provoke not your children to wrath,
Right.
So weaponization, they will pull out key verses and similar to what was, and I don't want to get too fast, but Juneteenth is Wednesday, but
Right.
the slave
Yes, indeed.
it wasn't that, and then there's some people who are ignorant of that. And
Welcome to the Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise podcast with Dr. William T. Choctaw, MD, JD. Our mission is to empower you with the knowledge and equip you with the tools you'll need to thrive in all aspects of your life. Join us now as we discuss everything from nutrition and exercise to money management, personal growth, and spiritual growth. Dr. Choctaw will provide insightful advice on how to improve your physical, financial, and spiritual health, as well as your emotional and mental well-being. So whether you're looking to get the latest in medical news, unlock financial opportunities, or cultivate a more positive mindset, we've got you covered. Get ready to become the best version of yourself. So let's get started. Here's Dr. William T. Choctaw, MD, JD, with an interview already in progress.
You used the term that I had not heard, and I want you to expand on that. Tell me about weaponization of the Bible.
For instance, and Dr. McCall used to preach like this, for instance, people will take out key verses in the Bible to substantiate a point that they want to get across without giving proper context of how that's used. For instance, I'm sure no one does that in 2024, does this in 2024, but perhaps husbands and wives, Ephesians 5:20. Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands.
Oh, yes.
Husbands will pull that out, and you're supposed to submit to me, but you have to keep reading. It says that's for the family, and it says at the end of all that, it says submitting yourselves one to another, right?
Yes.
Which means that it's not about what I want. It's about, and it says, husbands, love your wives, and as Christ loved the church. And we know Christ was willing to die for the church. So wives, you shouldn't, men would throw that out, but then they're not following the pattern.
Exactly.
They're supposed to contextually for the rest of the scripture. Are you loving your wife in such a way that you would? Nobody's asking you to go jump in front of a truck, but if it came to that, would you do it without thinking? Would you, as Christ did for the church? He gave him support. Would you do that for your children? Nobody's asking you to do that. But if it came to that, would you do it? And would you do it? And do they know that you would do it? Are you living in such a way that they, again, respect and trust you?
Yes.
But some men will weaponize that and say, you're supposed to do what I say. And just like we talked about earlier, you honor thy father and thy mother. That's what it says. But it says, provoke not your children to wrath,
Right.
So weaponization, they will pull out key verses and similar to what was, and I don't want to get too fast, but Juneteenth is Wednesday. But the slave
Yes, indeed.
it wasn't that, and then there's some people who are ignorant of that, and even people of color today, I don't believe in the Bible because they used to use it to, no, they didn't use the whole Bible.
Right, they weaponized it. There you go.
To justify their point and didn't put it in proper context. And that's what a lot of people do without.
And they're still doing it. They're still doing it.
Yeah,
right.
And so to me, that's the weaponization. You're not really giving the whole truth. You're just using it to justify your little point for manipulation.
Yes.
You're trying to control people. So that's what I meant by that.
Well, I think it's a very profound concept, and I think whether we're talking about back in biblical times or whether we're talking about the periods of slavery, and I'm sure people like Harriet Tubman sat in meetings where folks were reading the Bible to her and saying, or some context saying slaves be obedient, whatever, and she says, no, I don't think so, because my God, that doesn't say that, and so my point is, I think you hit on such an important point. One has to be able to understand when words are being weaponized to manipulate and taken out of context. And your whole point is read the whole context, get the full meaning of whatever document you're talking about, whether it's the Constitution or the Bible. And many times you will get a broader interpretation, or more specifically, a more accurate interpretation of what's going on. And I think you're also correct that bad leaders or poor individuals who want to be leaders but who never will be will try to manipulate because that's all they have.
Yeah.
So they're going to misdirect, and they're going to lie, and they're going to cheat, and they're going to steal, and they're going to have you look at the shiny object instead of what's real, and I think it's important to always look at what's real, and I think and also I think your thoughts about men are right on the mark. It's so important. I think it's clearly a difference between men and women. Men really are from Mars, and women really are from Venus, right? And I think particularly if you look at men of color who have undergone a number of things throughout the years in slavery, and why folks were separated from the family because they didn't want that powerful union to be able to create powerful families in the future. But fortunately, much of that has changed.
Yes.
But I just think it's a good point to look at. Any other thoughts about that?
None that come to mind, sir. Although at the conclusion of this, when we're separated, I'm sure a bunch of things will pop into my head. But right now, that's about it for right now. But it's just important to remember that at all times. We're talking about this point, a lot of the things we've been speaking of, but that thing about the weaponization of the Bible, and not only to be on guard for it, but to make sure that we aren't perpetrators of it, at the same time.
That we don't do it, yeah.
We can fall into it, and, so we have to make sure that, we're interpreting it, and then we're disseminating the information correctly and in the proper context. And it's a two-edged sword. It's not always going to be to our liking.
Yes.
You got to be ready for that, and you got to be willing to accept that and move along, So I guess if anything, that would be that thought.
Well, one of the ways that I try to check myself in terms of weaponization of the Bible is judgment. Whenever I start looking at person A or person B or person C, and I start judging them, then I started saying, wait a second, let me take a step back. And who am I to judge one's lifestyle? Who am I to judge one's religion? Who am I to do that? And I think I just think that those are sometimes guideposts for us to take a look at and make sure that we don't inadvertently fall into it's my way or the highway type of mentality.
Absolutely. I often think along those lines you're speaking when I see an unhoused person who might be crossing the street or whatever.
Yes.
Make sure that I'm not judgmental because, I don't know their life, what brought them to that point. It could have been me. It could be me. Not only that, but I often think of the analogy or the parable, I should say, that Jesus mentioned in the Bible with the poor man and the rich man.
Yes.
And the rich man lifted up his eyes in hell, and the poor man ended up in the bosom of Abraham. And the rich man was like, can you dip your finger in the water and pour me in the plane?
Right.
And the poor man was in heaven, and the rich man was like, well, can you just tell my family, to live right? And I'm paraphrasing, to do all these things. They don't end up down here. So when I see those people, I the first thing that I've conditioned myself to pop into my head is, you know what? I can't judge because they very well may be in heaven before me or in heaven. I have to work on me. Yeah. I have to work on my heart and my mind and not judge them because God doesn't look at that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I often see them, and, I've learned to do. Now, a lot of unhoused people, they have, mental challenges, and they have other things, and some are not the nicest people. But don't know which is which,
exactly.
So I check myself with that as well with regard to what you said about judging.
Right.
I don't know, who am I? Because then I think and I say, what if someone's over there looking at me and they're judging me?
Exactly.
Oh, he's a black guy. He might be on crack. He might have been on crack.
That's right.
I'm sure he's up to no good. He might be getting ready to steal something.
Right. Exactly.
So I make sure I stay dialed in and don't do that, and realize that everyone has value.
Yes.
Everyone has value.
God made us all.
Everyone has value to God, and so it's challenging sometimes because we're humans and we think finite, like you said earlier. But to your point, the judging, I always check myself with that. And I when I see unhoused people, that's where my head goes. Like, instead of like, oh my God, then I'm like, hey, wait a minute now. I don't know their story, because as you know, there's people with doctorate degrees on Skid Row.
Yes, they are.
It happened, so yes, I'm not rambling. To that point, I stay dialed in.
No, what you say makes perfect sense. My growth as a person clearly occurred when I was in medical school. I'm talking about judging now. I'm basically, from the born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee, on and on and on. And I had certain ideas and certain opinions and judgments, if you will, about folks, because this is what I was taught, and I had limited experience. And one of the points, at least at my medical school, they brought up that it said you need to know everything about different people, because you're going to come across all these different people in your profession. And it is not your job to judge if so-and-so comes in with this infection or whatever, what kind of person are they, whatever. That's not your job. Your job is to take care of them. I used to say to some of my friends, if I was on trauma call for one night and the Imperial Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan came in having a gunshot wound, and he ends up on my table, my job is to save his life, and I will save his life, and I will not judge him. I will not judge him because I was taught that, and I believe that's the right thing, and I have continued to carry that. But it has broadened my scope. I think about it. Had I gone in a different direction, my way of thinking, I'm sure, would be completely different. But I've seen that other way, and I said, to your point, that's not right. Who am I to judge the guy just because he's homeless and has raggedy clothes and body odor and blah, blah, blah? He can have gallbladder disease and perforation just like anybody else. My job is to go in and fix the problem. And I think the more I focused on that, it made me a better person. It clearly made me a better person because I looked at just changing that one aspect a little different. But for one paycheck, all of us could be on Skid Row or on the street or whatever. It's not that far away. And you're correct. A lot of the folks who are there do have mental illness, who started off doctors, lawyers, teachers, blah, 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 blah. But things didn't go well. It didn't go well, and they didn't have the help and weren't able to do it. And they end up being there. Type things. Some women with children, et cetera, et cetera. So it's that's reality. Well, anything else you want to share with us? Again, I want to be respectful of your time.
No, that's okay. Like I said, I just have this event and something. I will wrap it up with this, well, with two things, and what you were saying, and I don't want to step outside of my lane because that's okay. But that goes in sync with, I believe it's your Hippocratic oath. I believe it starts with "do no harm."
Yes. So, that's exactly right.
you're just staying true to that, number one. And then number two, about the unhoused, and you all are probably familiar with this story, but there was someone told me a story one time. They were, you remember when we had an influx of these Christian plays? They would show at the Wilshire E-Bell, and it would be a musical, and they had a Christian theme or whatever, and so many people would go and see that. And someone told me one time they went to see this play. I can't remember the name of it or whatever. And there was this homeless guy that was going down the line and asking for money. His clothes were all raggedy and all that stuff like that. And he was annoying people and getting annoyed while they were waiting to get into the place. And so he was just, I don't know if he had body odor or if he was, and he was just a mess, and he was asking for whatever donations or whatever. And he was just annoying people. And all of that, and someone told me they experienced that while they were waiting in line to get into the play. And so anyway, they got into the play and they were watching the play and all of that stuff like that. And the play had to do with Jesus and all of that stuff like that. And when the time came for Jesus to come out, it was the homeless guy.
Is that right? Interesting.
He came out on stage, the same guy that had been annoying them. They were like, "Well, I wish you'd leave me alone." He was in the line. He was in the play, and he was Jesus.
Interesting.
So my point is,
be
careful.
Yeah.
Be careful. You don't. And there's a scripture that speaks to that too. You don't know you might be entertaining an angel, and you shouldn't be that way anyway. You should treat everybody with respect. But my point is, just be careful. You just don't judge people. Judge ye not, lest ye also be judged with that same measure. And there's only one judge, and that's Jesus. He's the righteous judge. None of us can judge because we're all jacked up. All of us. All of us.
Indeed.
And, I'm sorry not to give you another story, but that's really all I get. That's really all I get.
Well, Reverend Nickens, thank you so much. As always, it is a pleasure, beyond measure. And we,
both of you too, Jesse. Still there? Did I put you to sleep?
No, I'm here. I was just taking it all in, and I was thinking that you mentioned something about something might come to you after we conclude. We do have a website and we do blog, so feel free to jot down whatever those thoughts are. You can send it to either one of us, we can post it as a blog.
Okay.
Afterthoughts, of things.
That's true.
Postscripts. There you go.
Yes, indeed. Because indeed, you are a part of us, and when I say us, I mean the podcast. Specifically.
All are a part of me. Trust me, I love you all dearly. Not the whole St. Stephen, the men's class, but you two in particular. I really do. You have a special place in my heart at all times, and that's why it's almost like Christmas in whatever month I come, and I see Dr. Choctaw, and I come back to the church, I'm like, oh my gosh, it feels like my gift is seeing you. So I love you all both, and thank you so much.
Same here. And thank you again for your time, and have a wonderful rest of your Father's Day weekend.
Yes, sir. And you all as well. You should be able to pick any place to eat, because on Father's Day, it's wide open. On Mother's Day, you can't find a place. On Mother's Day.
That's true. The crowds are not there. All right. Take care now. Okay. Bye-bye.
God bless you.
God bless you too.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise podcast with Dr. William T. Choctaw, MD, JD. Be sure to check out other great episodes covering areas of health, wealth, and wisdom at thwwp.com. And while you're there, be sure to check out the books, blogs, and other literature in your preferred format. And don't forget to leave a review, subscribe, share, and support the podcast. That's at thwwp.com. You've been listening to the Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise podcast with Dr. William T. Choctaw, MD, JD.